Hello, my name is Annalie, and today I'm going to show you how to use Qualtrics if you're using it for your thesis, for data collection, or you are running any type of online experiment. So Qualtrics is a very useful tool that I use all the time when I'm doing research. So without further ado, let's jump in. So imagine that you're doing some type of online experiment for your thesis. So what you want to do is go on the homepage of Qualtrics, and now you click on Main Menu, Projects, or you click directly on Create a New Project. So I'm going to create a new project, and typically I'm going to use survey creation. So I'm going to get started. If I'm doing a thesis, I'm going to call this project Thesis Experiment, and use a blank survey project if I'm new to Qualtrics. So great. So now I have my homepage from Qualtrics, and right here, basically, oops, I have my experiment, and I have the first block, the default question block, and this is basically the first page that my participant will see. And naturally, I will want to perhaps organize my research experiment into several blocks. So when I'm collecting any type of data from individuals, naturally, I need to ask them for the informed consent. So my first block will be called consent. So I change this, and then perhaps I'm going to want to show some kind of stimulus material to my participants. So let's say I'm going to show them two speeches. So I'm gonna use this one and call it stimulus 1, then another block, call it stimulus 2. Let's imagine we have two experimental conditions, and afterwards I'm gonna gather some types of measures. So I'm gonna call this block scales. And in the very end, I can ask my participants some information like their socio-demographic data, their age, or what gender they identify themselves as. So socio-demographic. Great. So I have these blocks. It's organized. Oh, and of course I want to say thank you in the end for their participation. Great. So now the first question I have to ask my participants is their informed consent. So this will be a multiple choice question where they can see, yes, I consent, or no, I do not consent. And what do I write in this consent form? So typically, I'm going to use a standardized text. So basically, I'm going to be asking my participants that they can participate if they're above 18, and that I include my name, what university I'm working at or studying in, and I give some information about my experiment. So in this case, it will be about communication in an entrepreneurial setting, and just some basic information, so how long it's going to take them. So let's say that this experiment has no compensation, there are no risks involved, etc., etc. And if they have any types of questions, they can feel free to contact me. So I would replace this with my contact information. So I do copy. I'm going to go back into Qualtrics and write this text right here. There we go. And yes, so I can see that the formatting is a little bit off right now, but you can adjust this based on what you need in your experiment. And this tag is actually what the participants are going to, they will not see this, but I will see this when I download my data. So my first question is set. So I'm asking the informed consent. And I want to add in a requirement. This is very important. I want to make a forced response, meaning that the participants must answer this question before they move to the next block. Okay, great. So we have our question 1. Now, I'm going to show my stimulus materials to my participants. And let's say I'm going to show them a transcript of a speech. So here I will have my stimulus 1, so speech 1. And here, let's imagine that you have an actual speech written out, but for the kind of benefit of this example, I'm just gonna say talk about an entrepreneurial pitch. So let's say my business will grow 200%. And here will be the other condition. So what I can do is actually I also add a new question, so a text or a graphic. So, and now I can say that my business will lose 200%. So now we're going to be comparing an entrepreneur who's talking about growth to an entrepreneur who's talking about losses. So I call this speech 2. Okay. And let's imagine that my speech was a little bit longer. So perhaps I want to make sure that the participants don't just skip over this text, but actually read it. So how can I do this? Actually, there's this handy tool in Qualtrics called timing. And here I can delay showing the submit button. So this means that participants cannot go forward. And I can ask them to stay on this page, let's say for 20 seconds or 30 seconds, 1 minute, whatever you choose. Let's say 30 seconds. Okay. So now this means that participants cannot go to the next page until they spend at least 30 seconds on this page. And I'm going to copy this right here, and I shall move this question below right after the second speech. Cool. So both of these speeches now have the same conditions. So, okay, my participant will read one of the 2 speeches, and afterwards he or she will answer some questions. So I've prepared a scientific measurement scale right here. So we're talking about entrepreneurs. So I took a scale that was developed by Macmillan in a 1985 paper about qualities that are associated with being a successful entrepreneur. And here's the scale. So to what extent do you agree that not the avatar, but the entrepreneur is able to perform a sustained effort, able to demonstrate leadership, unable to put in enough effort into the startup? So this is actually a reverse measure, meaning that the higher the participants the entrepreneur scores in this, that means the less perceived success does this individual have. And there are several ways I can enter these questions into my questionnaire. So for example, if I want to do really a block, I can use let's see where this is, a matrix table. And this is something pretty handy because it enables me to ask several questions at the same time and have this kind of unit. So my scale is called entrepreneurial success. And what am I asking? To what extent do you agree that the entrepreneur is? So I copy this question right here. And then I will insert my assertions here. So let's say able to perform a sustained effort. This here. The next one, able to demonstrate leadership. And able to evaluate risk well. Great. And what will the participants see here? So it will be either 1, completely disagree, to 5, completely agree. And I can choose whether I show the numbers or not. So let's just say I'll start completely disagree, disagree, neither, agree, nor, disagree, agree, completely agree. So I make sure that everything is equal, and I have my questionnaire here. And what I want to do is always ask to add a requirement, the forced response. This way I make sure that my participants cannot just skip forward. So this is one way to gather the data. This is very handy because once you download the data, it is actually kind of handy because you will download the questions with export tags, meaning that my data, the first question will be labeled ES1, ES2, etc. And automatically, the scale 1 is going to be kind of linked to this point 1. And if the participant says 5, it will be linked to a point called 5. But what do I do with reverse variables? Unfortunately, if you use this type of scale, you cannot reverse individual questions, meaning changing 1 for 5, 2 for 4, 3 for 2, and 5 for 1. This you cannot do. But there's another method that you can use to kind of reverse the points that you give. So this was one method, and I can actually use another method. So I can use a multiple choice question and kind of use a list in a horizontal form where my participants have 5 possible choices. So for example, instead of listing my questions in this matrix, I could ask, to what extent do you agree that the entrepreneur is attentive to detail? For example, and here I copy the same answers I had before, so completely disagree, disagree. And my question will be asked in this format, and also what I want to do is never to forget to add the requirement of the forced response. And I have to manually add the tag, so I'm going to call this ES4. And my question will be asked in one line. And for example, if I need to copy this, so I'm just going to copy this question. And now let's ask a reverse order question. So, to what extent do I think that the entrepreneur is unable to demonstrate adequate leadership? And this time, I'm actually assessing something negative. Thus, this is a reverse variable. This is the opposite of entrepreneur success. So, what I can do now is actually recode the values of these questions, meaning that 1 is completely disagree, but now it's gonna, from 1 point, it will become 5 points. 2 points will actually be 4 points. 3 will be 3, 4 will be 2, and 1 will be completely agree. And this means that once I download my data, the points associated will be automatically already recoded, how I asked Qualtrics to do it. So I'm gonna call this ES5, and to remember that it's a reverse variable, I add this little label R. So now I have my questions that the participant will answer about the entrepreneur. And what I forgot to do is actually add a little information in the beginning for my participant about what he or she or they will have to do now. So I will add a little bit of information. Now you will answer some questions about the entrepreneur, or how you perceive the entrepreneur, your impressions about the entrepreneur, it really depends. Okay, so now I have my scales. And what is really important to do when I'm doing such studies is really to make sure that any effect that I find in my main study is not linked to the order of the questions. So what I will do now is randomize the order of my questions. So I have some information, so I'm going to use advanced randomization. So my little information in the beginning, I want it to always stay in the beginning. However, the questions that follow, I want them to be randomized. So I'm going to take these and I will put them here, randomize, and use. Okay, how do I do this now? Okay. Oh, there we go. So I actually have to select these questions and I add them to randomize the questions. So now, okay, great. I save this measure, and that means that now these questions will be displayed in random order. If I use matrix tables, I also want the order of these assertions to be randomized. So I can click on my question, and here I will choose statement randomization. And I want to display all of the answers in random order. And what this will do is that to each new participant, the order of these rows will be presented in a new way, in a new fashion, which also serves the same purpose. Great, so now I have these questions. I want to maybe ask some questions about the participant. So I ask some questions about the participant. And here I can maybe import from the library. So Qualtrics has some default questions, for example, or I really encourage you to investigate what's there. Otherwise, I can ask participants, for example, what is your age? Type your age in numbers. Also, forced response. And questions about participant gender, which gender they identify with, or their level of education, for example. And here I'm going to ask participant, age, and then I have other questions that I ask my participants, and then in the end I add a little message. So not a multiple choice, just a sentence. And I can say, thank you for taking part in my survey, or whatever information you need to give your participants after this. Okay, great. So now I have all of the blocks I need for my survey. But what am I going to do about these two stimuli? I don't want my participants to read both texts. I want them to randomly read one text. So what I can do is actually pretty handy. So I'm going to go into the survey flow, and this really manages the order in which my participants see the different questions. So first of all, I have my informed consent. And after my informed consent, I actually want to get rid of the participants who did not give their consent. So I'm going to add a branch, and I add a condition, a link to a question. So consent. So if the participant answers this question, no, I do not consent, is selected, I'm going to end the survey for them. They cannot continue. If not, they will be able to continue. So, and after this, I'm going to add a randomizer, which I move below after this first condition. And I will ask Qualtrics to randomly present one of the texts. So I'm going to choose randomly present, evenly present these elements, and this means that Qualtrics will automatically either show stimulus 1 or stimulus 2. How am I going to identify this in my data? So what I can do is actually create a group. So I'm going to call this group stimulus 1. So let's just say 1. Done. And I move it right here. And actually, I move my stimulus here. And additionally, what I will move here, which will enable me to identify which speech was shown to my participants, is the embedded data. So let's say ID for the speech. I'm going to set the value now, and I choose 1. So let's just put it above my speech. And so this means that once I download my data, if participants saw speech 1, then it will automatically have a tag 1. I will do the same for stimulus 2. So I'm going to call it 2. So I'm just going to copy this block, duplicate this. I'm going to move it down to group 2. So here I'm going to set 2. And I put my other stimulus right here, right below. So now this is very handy. So randomly, participants are either going to see the speech number 1 or the speech number 2. Plus in my final data, I have this embedded data tag helping me to identify. So afterwards, in the survey flow, we can see that first we have the consent, then we have the stimulus. Afterwards, the participant will see the block of the scales, the socio-demographic variables, and finally, the thank you message. So I'm going to apply this. And now my new order of the survey is saved. I'm going to click publish, and this way I publish my survey, and all of the changes I made are saved in the survey. Now I can use this link to communicate to any potential participants or individuals who I would like to invite to my survey. This is an anonymous link. Okay, but for now, let's just try it out, see what we have. So, and to do this, I think I'm gonna pause my timers. So I'm just gonna put like 0 seconds for now, but I need to remember to change this. So, oh, where did this timer go? So where was it? Timer. So, okay, 1 second. Great. So stimulus 1, stimulus 2, just for the sake of consistency. So now I want to save my changes. Publish. Every time you want to save your changes, you publish. And once I'm happy with my questionnaire, I want to preview. And this enables me to see what the participant in the end will actually see. So here, I'm a participant, so either I have a computer on my left or I'm answering from my smartphone, and I see the informed consent. Of course, this block of text is a little bit indigestible, so I highly encourage you to kind of play with the formatting, maybe split it into paragraphs, but for the sake of this example, I'm going to say, yes, I consent, and imagine that I read everything. So sorry, guys. So I go forward. And now I read speech 2, I believe, so my speech will lose 200%. Wow. So now I'll go forward, but the final participant will not see the timing. I just get to see this as the user of Prolific. I go forward. And so now I get to see, now you'll answer some questions about the entrepreneur. To what extent do you agree that the entrepreneur is attentive to detail? Maybe I disagree because their business will lose 200%. To what extent do you think that the entrepreneur is? Completely disagree, completely agree. Able to perform a sustained effort? I think I disagree. Leadership, I disagree. Able to evaluate risk? Completely disagree, given that the business will lose so much money. And to what extent do you agree that the entrepreneur is unable to demonstrate adequate leadership? And I think I completely agree, given the sad results. Okay. Now, oh, this is the final part of the questionnaire. What is your age? Let's say 100. You had a normal age. Okay, go forward. And thank you for taking part in my survey. Amazing. So now I completed my questionnaire. So I can close this preview. I'm just going to double check that in the thank you. Oh, so I see this timer jumped here, so I don't need it in the thank you, so I get rid of it. But so just you see, this is typical standard questionnaire. You can actually create more blocks for the scales if you need to randomize this as well. And these are basically the tools that you need to create an online questionnaire. Also, with the stimulus material, you have many more possibilities. What you can do is actually you can also embed images here. You can also embed videos using the HTML view. For example, you can embed YouTube videos into the stimulus material. So you can really play with Qualtrics and add whatever information you would like to add. Just don't forget every time after working on your questionnaire to publish, to save your changes. So these are the tools that you need to create a questionnaire. And once you have finished gathering your data, so sending out the anonymous link, you will have your data stored in the data analysis section. And once you need to analyze your data quantitatively or qualitatively, I highly recommend that you export your data. So now we didn't have any answers that recorded because we didn't finish the questionnaire from before because of the timer. But when you will gather your data, you will have several rows indicated here, and you will be able to export your data. And typically, if you want to analyze the numbers, you can export it in Excel format using numeric values. And if you use any kind of randomizer, you can also export viewing order data from randomized surveys, and then you download. But we will not do this now. This is for a next time. So thank you so much for your attention, and I wish you good luck with your online survey.